Joanne Catherine. My maiden name was Shaver Brown. And I was named Joanne, I think probably because my father's name was Joseph.
Okay.
That's what makes sense to me. Catherine is a middle name, and that's a family middle name. And your mom's middle name is Catherine. My middle name is Catherine. My sister's middle name is Catherine. My grandmother's middle name was Catherine. And your sister's name is Catherine. So that's where it comes from.
It just runs in the family.
It runs. It's a middle name, and Courtney's middle name is Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like passing something on.
Shaver.
Shaver, which is spelled C-H-A-I-V, like Victor, R-E. And we always thought it was a French name, and it is a French name.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out the people were not from France. They were from Switzerland.
Oh.
From the border area of Switzerland that speaks French. And there's a little town there where everybody there has got the same last name. It's 500 years old. Bill says it's a bunch of raving idiots. They've been married for so long. But they were very nice. Jojo.
Jojo? Mm-hmm. Is that kind of stuck with you?
Well, you know what? The file kids call me Aunt Jojo.
Aunt Jojo?
But that's the only one that ever calls me Jojo anymore. I was born in 1942 at Mount Carmel Hospital in Detroit. And it's on April 1st. And it snowed on the day I was born. Because my dad said he took me out and showed me through the window that it was snowing. I don't remember it. Catholic, Roman Catholic. And that's generations of Catholic. The little town of Switzerland, the genealogist that helped me there he's deceased now, but he was and is a Catholic priest, a dead Catholic priest. Lived in. The address was 815 Maxwell, that was in Royal Oak, Michigan. And it was a house that my parents rented from my grandparents. My grandparents had a couple homes that they built, and I guess my folks lived in, and they lived there till I was like in the 6th grade. So I guess that's probably about 12. Yeah, probably about 12. So they must have lived there about 12 years and then we lived in another house, and then my folks bought their own house, and that was in probably 1958.
What other homes have you lived in?
I've lived in, so that was the first house and the only house up to then. And then when my folks bought a house, they lived at 1806 Evergreen, which was much closer to the Shrine Church, which is the church we belong to. And it was a fine house. And I lived there until I got married. And Bill and I had bought a house before we got married. And we rented it out to the person that we bought it from, because they needed it for another year. So in 1962 when we got married, and that was at 609 Lerner Street in Clawson, Michigan. So those were my only houses. Of course, but through it all, this cottage that we're at now, 928 North Long Lake Boulevard, has been a constant summer home for all my life. Back before my life began. I only have one sister.
One sister.
And she was 3.5 years younger than me. So I always thought and I was the oldest, obviously. So I was the responsible one, but I always thought she was the cute one. and she always said cute things, and she always made everybody laugh. And I was kind of serious and responsible. Well, do for fun. We would come into the cottage every summer as soon as school was out, which it's now kind of a suburb of Royal Oak or Detroit, but we would pack up and we would come to the cottage. We would pack all of our clothes and all of our not dishes, but all of our food and everything, and we would come out here. And we didn't have telephones like you do and things now, so I would write letters back to my friends in Royal Oak. So I always had a group of summer friends that were out here, and then a group of winter friends, or other year friends that were in Royal Oak. But everybody, for fun, like we laugh even when our children were little. Sundays was we just didn't have the type of entertainments and stuff that's available now. So we would go for a ride.
Yeah.
We'd get in the car, and of course my sister and I would always talked about when we get in the car, my dad and my mother both smoked back in those days. And we would be sitting in the back seat, green, because it would be cold, it was in the winter, and we'd take a ride out to the lake here, or someplace where you could go and get hot chocolate or whatever you want to get as a treat. And in the fall, it might be to the apple farm or something like that. And we would be like green because the smoke was like, you know, so it's just a wonder we don't have secondhand smoke injury. But then, you know, and even when our kids were little, it was something to do on a Sunday. We would take a ride, maybe end up at one of the grandparents' house, and that was extra good because they might invite us to dinner. And we didn't have any money. And so that was a big plus when somebody invited you to your families. You happened to stop by my mom's or Grandma Brown's, and they would say, oh, well, you want to stay for dinner? Oh, well, you really shouldn't, but okay. And then we would have free dinner, and we didn't have to pay for it. I don't remember doing many chores.
No.
No, I think my mother. I had to make my bed, and I always remember that was the first thing I would do. When you get up in the morning, I'd pull the covers up so I could kind of get out of bed, really slide out, and it'd be almost made then, so it wasn't as much of a thing. But I always heard that if you get your bed made first thing in the morning, you've already accomplished something for the day. I was telling your mother this. The first book I really remember reading was Little Women, and it's at the Fish Cottage upstairs in the bookcase. And I don't know where. I don't know where I found it, I know I didn't buy it or anything. Someone from the lake either gave it to me because I was out here at the cottage, and I was probably fifth or sixth grade, something like that. But and I remember reading that. That was my first big book, now kind of a book, you know.
Yeah.
But I had, because of I don't know if you remember Aunt Loretta, but I had an aunt that lived with me my whole life. She was my mother's aunt, actually. She was my grandmother's youngest sister. And so she lived with us our whole life. And so it's almost like I had two mothers. And so Aunt Loretta on Sunday would always read me the newspaper, the comic page of the newspaper. So that, or she must have read books too, but I don't remember much about books. But I do remember her reading me the Sunday comics. Oh, well, we used to play hopscotch on the sidewalk. I remember that. But we lived in a neighborhood. There was just me and my sister and maybe another girl. There weren't a lot of kids, and there were no. I had never hit a ball with anything or caught a ball with anything, which is why I can't hit a ball or catch a ball to this day, because I missed that lump in my childhood where you played ball. So I never saw anybody playing ball. My dad was not a particularly athletic, or my mom. You know, they didn't play golf or didn't play tennis or anything that had to do with balls. So I didn't learn any of those things at all. Is when I can remember, what I remember is that, I would travel sometimes with my aunt, and in the summertime, when she took me on a cruise to Mackinac, I got to get like 2 or 3 new dresses, and it was quite exciting to have 2 or 3 new dresses. But mainly the thing I remember about clothes was when I was probably a little older, maybe 6th, 7th grade probably, and the popular thing was having a lot of crinolines, which are like stiff skirts, stiff slips that you'd wear underneath your skirt. And so you'd wear 2 or 3 or 4 of these things to get your dress to stick out. And my sister was always in the closet, and she'd get the best one, the closet, because we could wear similar things. And she would get the best crinolines, and I had to get there early I had to get dressed early in order to get the right crinolines so that my skirts would stick out. So, but I do have a story about school that I can tell you about Papa. I like to tell Papa's stories more than my own. But in those days, if you kind of were in one classroom, nowadays even in grade school, a lot of times they have you change classes, so you didn't really know anybody in your other classes. Maybe every year there might be a they might switch a couple people up, but you kind of had the same group that you went to school with. Well, when I was in first grade, I heard a story that a boy had gotten in a fight and was in big trouble. And I learned out years later it was Papa. He had, and I never knew it at that time, but I remember hearing about it, and it was like a very big scandal, because in those days, you know, two kids didn't fight. not fisticuffs kind of fighting in first grade.
Was that the first time you heard about Papa?
I didn't even know who he was. I just heard a boy. I didn't really even know we never had any classes together, and I didn't even know who he was until the 7th grade.
Wow.
Not in particular in the grade school. They were we had pretty much all nuns then.
Oh.
We had a couple that weren't nuns, but they were nice enough. I mean, nobody other than, you know, getting whacked with a ruler. I mean, which I never had happen because I was not. But they would give you the ruler and make you hit your own hand.
Oh.
So that, you know, hit over your own knuckles. But I never had that happen. But that was no, I didn't have. I mean, I might have had a teacher that I liked, but you had the same teacher for the whole year. Mm-hmm. And I know there was a teacher in like 4th grade, and her name was Sister Ruth, and she limped, so I don't know what the heck was wrong with her, but she had a limp, and boy, you prayed that you didn't get her, because she was mean. And I didn't get her, so it was okay. That's all I knew. Well, probably, I don't know what they would have said about me.
Responsible, like.
Well, yeah. I was in the popular group.
Yeah.
Because we had starting in the 7th or 8th grade, there was a group, and it was like a club, and you had to be invited to come to the club, and it was called Sclabajam. Ooh. And it was made up of all the initials of the girls. J, Joanne, Sclabajam. We even had a song. It went to the Mickey Mouse House song. SCLAB hyphen A hyphen JAM. And we actually made, one of the girls had an aunt that was a nun, and we would make little things for her, the nun, to give to the poor kids where the nun worked, you know, like little bean bags or something like that. And we made collars out of blue felt and sewed Sclabajam and sequins on them. And because we didn't wear uniforms at school, no, not in grade school, so we could wear our Sclabajam collars to school over our blouses or whatever, and it was kind of like the, you know, quite a status symbol. The boys didn't like it because we stuck together, all the girls, in Sclabajam, but not a good sport. I told you I couldn't catch a ball. We had to do sports in PE, and of course basketball. We had played basketball, but you could only play half court. Girls weren't allowed to run the whole court. You might die if you made it to the other end of the court. The girls' rules was half court. So, but no, I didn't ever, no sports. And like I said, I never played any street sports.
Did you have any activities or clubs?
I danced. I took dance lessons. Oh yes, I was a dance lesson. And I did tap and ballet and acrobatics. Yeah, it was a combination of 3 class, yeah. And I was a good little dancer. I liked to dance, and I still like to dance. Well, in high school, I was captain of the cheerleaders.
There you go.
Yeah, but we didn't really have, we didn't have any class officers until you were seniors. You know, and then I was captain of the cheerleaders, so that ruled me out of anything else because I was, and that was the only year that they had officers back then because that was going to go in the yearbook. Yeah, it must have been. I was also on the homecoming court. Mm-hmm. But all that stuff was pretty much for the old juniors or seniors. The freshmen and sophomore didn't get to do anything too much. Pretty ordinary, I think, for those times. It was when our friends, and we still have a lot of friends that we all went to school with that also married someone else in the class. I think there was like something like 10 intermarriages, and so that's like 20 people. And we all say that it was really a great time to live because we still had a lot of values, and but yet we were still respectful. We still had knew how to have fun. We could have fun, but it wasn't anything dangerous fun. It was fun. And so it was a good time. I think it was a good time to grow up, a good time to not nearly the stress that the generations now do have with the TV. And we did have TV, but it was so different than it is now. And we didn't have phones, and I mean, we had phones, but not cell phones. And your parents were there watching. When you sat on the phone for more than 15 minutes, they were saying, "Excuse me, somebody else might want to make a phone call," so you'd have to get off. So there was, and you were within inches of them, so who had any kind of private conversation? Not hardly. So it was a different world. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be a nurse.
You wanted to be a nurse?
I wanted to be a nurse.
Why did you want to be a nurse?
Because it was, women in those days could be teachers or nurses, or moms. But I figured I'd be a mom too, but I wanted to be a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
But then I met Papa, and then I decided I didn't want to go away to nursing school. First, I worked part-time at AAA, which is Automobile Club, because that's where Aunt Loretta worked.
Mm-hmm.
And every year when you had to renew your license plates, it was like their busy season, so I would go in and type up things. But that was like once a year for 2 or 3 Saturdays. That was about it.
Mm-hmm.
My first job was when I graduated from high school, and I worked at General Motors, Fisher Body, in the personnel department.
Have you had any other jobs?
Oh, through the years, yeah. Well, yes, I worked there until your mom was born, and then one time when money was really tough, I took a job at the post office at nighttime. Sorting mail or something. It was only I did that for one winter.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, your mom was a little, that was probably, because I know I had to do bottles, so it must have been, I don't remember, Linda was little.
Mm-hmm.
Where I worked most after that was I worked at a drug rehab program in Clearwater.
Okay.
For like 8, 9, 10 years, something like that. And it was it was quite an experience back in the in the 80s, and it was a residential treatment program, and so they all had a bunch of young adults that were court ordered there, and then counselors, and I was like the token middle-aged, my vocabulary doubled in about 2 weeks of working there. It was very, very interesting. But I was like, I was this white middle-class lady amongst all these druggies and counselors who were out in left field, a lot of them, and so I was kind of the stabilizing middle of the wheel.
Have you had any other jobs since that job?
Oh, yeah, I did. I worked for a secretarial agency one time. In fact, that was when we moved to Florida, then we moved back. Then we didn't have any money again. So then I was working for a secretarial service. Lots of hard times, well, because there was just one person working, so obviously, yes, yeah. We managed, but you did without, and you made do, and you hoped somebody invited you to dinner on Sunday, so you didn't have to pay for the dinner. So yeah, there were tough times, and especially when we moved to Florida. And then we moved back to Michigan, and when we moved back to Michigan, it was really because of that. Myself and the kids were lonesome. Papa liked his job, didn't like that job in particular, but he liked Florida. But we were all lonesome. We gone for a year, and we'd never ever left anywhere, and so we were lonesome. So we went back. Well, when we went back, that's when the gas crunch hit. Mm. So Papa really was, it was rough because we actually were on food stamps.
Really?
We went on food stamps for a while because we used up all of our savings, and we didn't have any much of a cushion left. So we went, and that was and then we decided to come back to Florida, and then he got a job, and so then we were back, because when he went back, he was a salesman, and that was when there was the economy crunch. Well, I mean, first of all, he was selling Buicks at that time. Well, nobody's buying no Buick with all that gas in it, so that was a bad one. And then I'm trying to think what other car. Then he had worked for Volkswagen before, but that's when he went and got called back down to, because when we were here, he worked for the district, and he had met a lot of different dealers, and so he had a lot of connections. And so when things were not going well in Michigan, then he called down here and he got a job with one of the dealers that he used to call on. So then we were at least able to eat. Well, I really didn't have that many. Like I said, I worked at AAA. I mean, I loved my job at GM because it was in the personnel department, and it was I knew all the gossip that was going on, and you had to be careful, but you knew whoever was getting raises, and you knew who was getting reprimands, and the funnest part was in the fall when they had the World Series. Of course, nobody had any way of knowing what was going on at the World Series, but we were allowed to listen to the World Series. And then at the end of each inning, we would go to all the different departments at GM. This was at Fisher Body, where the designers worked. And we'd go and we'd say, the score is, we'd walk up and down, holler in the score so that they would know what the score is. We got to do that at the end of every inning because nobody could listen to a radio or anything like that. That was off limits. Well, I met, like I said, we went to first grade together, and I did know of him, but I didn't know of him that much. But I knew, but when we were in 7th grade, he was in my classroom, so I knew who he was. And he was we didn't wear uniforms. So I just remember one time he had black pants and a black shirt on. I thought that was kind of sexy looking, He had these black pants and black shirt. He probably had a white belt. I don't know what it would have been then. But I thought, oh, that's kind of, and he had big dimples, dimples. I mean, he looked a lot like you. He didn't look like you, Dane, because you're thinner, but he looked a lot like you. So what was the question? That was, when did I first meet him?
Yeah.
Yes.
You met him in school?
Yeah, in school.
And how old were you? You 7th grade?
Oh, yeah, well, that's when I knew him. But we didn't start dating till I was 15.
15.
Which would have been the fall, just 15, because it would have been the fall of our freshman year.
Do you remember the first date that you went on with Papa?
We went to a movie.
To a movie?
Yeah, it was, and we must have. I don't remember how we got there. It was about the only thing you kids had to do then, is go to the movies. But I do remember, and he'll tell you the story too, that, see, I was a few months older, 4 months older, so that would have been the next spring then. There was this group of girls that I had told you about, and all of the girls had spring birthdays, and a number of the boys, Papa wasn't the only one, had birthdays in July or August or even September. So we all got our licenses in the spring, and they didn't. And there was a time where he was walking home from school with a bunch of his buddies, and somebody, it wasn't me, but somebody had a car, and we drove by and we honked and waved and kept going. And I'll never live that down, because he said, you made us walk and everything, and I knew that the rest of your life, from April till July, I was going to have hell to pay, because I'm going to be older than him now, and so that's where I'm at right now. I hear all the old stories and old jokes and things like that. His integrity.
His integrity?
Yes. He wouldn't drink at all, in those days. I mean, and some of our friends did, but he didn't. Of course, his grandparents were alcoholics, so his parents were complete teetotalers, and his father, having the gas station, would give him gifts at Christmas time, and he'd get gifts of booze, and he'd stand there and turn it upside down the drain, So Bill was really very much not against drinking, but he would never consider drinking in high school, and he was very respected. He was a great schmoozer. The nuns, the teachers, they all loved him because he was a good guy. That's basically what it was. He was a good guy. And he didn't get in trouble, and he was, a guy's guy, and then that's what attracted me. It might have even been, I'm not even sure if it was a movie, so it might have been a dance. Might have been the homecoming dance in the fall. It seems to me like, because there used to be a homecoming, there was homecoming dance, how they have them. And I'm thinking, since it was the fall, he might have asked me to the homecoming dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can remember telling my friends, he's a very good kisser. And he still is. This must have been before. Well, he had his car when he was 16, so it had to be before he was 16. But he would walk me home, and then he'd have to get home. And his parents had a strict 10 o'clock curfew, so he would take off. And he would take off running because he had about a mile and maybe a mile and a half to his house from my house. And he would be going, I'd just see his little tail running down the road because he'd wait too long and it would be not enough time to make it home without getting in trouble. Well, we started going out and when we were 15 and he was 19 when we got married because we got married in between his birthday and mine. And I was 20. So 5 years probably, close to 5 years. Yeah. Well, things were a lot different. They were very strict, type of time. So you couldn't, I could only go out with him maybe, even though we were going steady, which meant, just one person. I still could only go out with him once a week. And then when it got a little older, maybe juniors or so, I could go out a couple times a week. So I was really looking forward to when we graduated and I went to work. Then I could go out with him 2 or 3 or 4 times. I mean, we didn't go out or he could come over or something. But in those days, you just didn't, that was too much time. So you were only allowed a few dates a week. We got married at Shrine of the Little Flower, where we were baptized in Royal Oak, Michigan.
What was the date?
May 5th. MC Papa we picked things on the 5th because then he remembers them. May 5th, and we got engaged on January 5th.
And how would you describe your wedding ceremony?
Oh, it was wild. Because both myself and my sister, who was the maid of honor, passed out.
Really?
Yes.
When did you pass out?
Well, actually, she passed out first. And I was, up on the altar. And, I think it was May, but it wasn't that hot. But everybody said it was warm, but it wasn't that warm. But she passed out first, and she fell down underneath the pew. It was just really glamorous. Because you get somebody stuck underneath the pew, how do you get them out? She fell down and then under the pew. And so they, 2 guys had her like this, one on each shoulder. And she was kind of dragging her feet out of the church. And I felt so bad for her because, here I was 20, she was 16 or 17, and I knew, the first time she's ever been in a wedding, and I thought, felt so bad for her because I thought, poor thing is going to be so embarrassed, and everything. And we're kneeling, and you had to kneel then, we had a kneeler, and we're kneeling, and I remember saying to Bill, and this has been verified, that I said to Bill, I leaned over and I said, I feel kind of funny. I didn't know, I've never passed out before, so I don't know what it felt like or what you did. But I remember saying, I feel kind of funny. Then the story, which I don't remember, is he put his arm around my waist, and I guess I passed out. And then they went and got a chair from somewhere behind the altar and brought it out and sat me down in it. Now that must have been interesting because in those days the wedding dress had big hoop things. I don't know what happened with that hoop when I sat down, but I don't know, but I sat down. And then the next thing I remember is standing up and then you took a bouquet over to Mary's altar and walking over to Mary's altar. And I don't remember that period between. But the thing is, there was somebody at the wedding. My father worked for a Jewish company, and there was, or Jewish owners of a bolt company. And they were there, and they said, Well, we had never been to a Catholic ceremony before. Could you explain to us, what was the part where the bride got sat down in a chair? They didn't realize that I had passed out. So then after, I didn't know I had, and we're walking out, we walked out, and then there's a big porch outside the church. And I guess I was saying, gee, I thought I was gonna pass out for a while. And finally, Bill said to me, stop saying that, you did pass out. I didn't know it. And I said, I did, you know? So I didn't know. I guess they had smelling salts. So, you know, so the priest or somebody had smelling salts. And then when they did that, I just came out of it like this, and I don't know what had happened. But anyway, so that, it was a wedding that was remembered. People talk about it to this day, when the bride and the maid of honor passed out. I told you about the passing out, and I know Papa wasn't happy because we had pictures, you know, and he does not like to have pictures taken. And the party was going on, and we had to go and stand and have pictures taken. And how many pictures are we going to take? You know, that type of thing. So he wasn't thrilled with the picture part. Yes, we did. We went to the Pocono Mountains, which was a big, I don't even know nowadays in bride magazines. I'm sure it's not anything. It's probably all like sandals, but it was a honeymoon resort. And so we drove to Pennsylvania, and then we had a week there. And it was a resort in the Pocono Mountains, and it was, we laughed because we had a movie camera, and we took pictures, and I think we'd never seen a waterfall before, because there's a lot of little waterfalls around the mountains of Pennsylvania. We have pictures of almost every waterfall, I think, because we must have been very entranced with the waterfalls, because we have a lot of pictures of waterfalls. But it was just a resort, you know, and they had a swimming pool, and it was indoors, which was nice because for May we could go swimming, and that was unusual. And it had, you know, outdoor shuffleboard and those kind of dumb things, and it was organized like a beach, like a maybe like a cruise would. You know, one night you had to dress up and find something to wear, and you know, different hokey things like that.
How long?
Oh, I think I've already said he's serious, but a really what do I want to say? Kind of sense of humor, dry sense of humor. And very, very, a lot of integrity. If he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. And I think that's, again, what, you know, one of the things that I've like have written in books like that when you got for your graduation. I think picking a spouse, it's so much luck and timing and all that stuff. Who really knows when you're like we were, 19 and 20, who knew hardly my name. But you know, I knew he was somebody that I respected, and I knew he was somebody that would take care of me, and be a good dad, and somebody that, even though I didn't always agree, I mean, obviously we don't always agree, it was somebody that I respected his opinion, and I knew he was honorable. No, not at all. No, we were both virgins. Oh, yeah. That's the way you did it in those days. Well, since, I guess it was probably, what did I say, 56, probably since 57, 58, 1958, something like that.
Wow.
That's a hard one. Just make a commitment and stick to it. I mean, believe it or not, there were times when I wanted to leave, and I'm sure there were times when he wanted to leave. In fact, I often will tell some of my friends, I laugh. One time, now this was in our first 10 years because I lived in Michigan, I ran away and I went to the mall, but I had to leave at 9 o'clock because the mall closed. And I didn't have any place else to go but to go home. Because in those days, you would never, ever have gone back to my parents or his parents. Oh, no. But I was ticked off at him for something. And I waited until he was home, and then I took the car and I ran away to the mall. But like I said, I was home at 9 o'clock. Oh, it would have been the house. Yeah, we bought that before we were married.
Which house was that?
On Lerner Street in Clawson, and it was a little 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, and we lived there for We actually, because we bought it before we were married, and we were married for 10 years in the house, and then we had kept it for the year we moved to Florida, which is another reason why we were able to move back, because we just rented it for a year, and then so it was convenient, and we just went back, and then we did sell it. So we had it from until about 73 or 4. Oh, well, I was hoping that I would be, very excited. And you just, you just, first of all, you realize that you're pregnant because nature hasn't come. And so you know you're pregnant, but you don't want to say anything because you want to surprise them. And so it was, I went to the doctor, and he said, yep, that's it.
How long after you guys were married did you become pregnant?
Your mom was born March 26th. We would have been married, let's see, in May, 1 year. So I think it was like, because I remember, I figured it out, it was okay. March, we were married in May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February. February 5th would have been 9 months, and your mother was born March 26th. But your mother was late, and she was like 3 weeks late. I was due at the beginning of March, and she was very stubborn. And so she was like 3 weeks late, and so that was a long time to be carrying a baby pregnant for 3 more weeks than you want to be. Okay, and I had no miscarriages, so that was a wonderful blessing. Lori was born March 26, 1963. Don was born May 7th, 1965. And Linda was supposed to be born in June of 67. So I was going to have 63, 65, and 67. But I was going to have March, and my birthday's in April. Don's is in May. She was going to be in June, and Bill's is in July. And I didn't really plan it, but that's what it was going to be. But then Linda was very early. She was like 2 or 3 weeks early, so she was born on May 17th, 67. No particular reason. I don't know of anything. Catherine, well, the girls each have Catherine, as I said, middle name. And I guess I liked the name of Lori. Don, we knew we wanted a short name. It was either going to be Don or Dean. I don't know. And so, but he's Don Williams, so that's that. And Linda, I don't know, I liked the nickname Lindy.
Yeah.
And no reason in particular. No, she's not named after anybody. First of all, when they're your own children, everything they do is wonderful. You're just amazed at this little being, and oh my gosh, So all my children were very smart and were good babies. I never had any colicky or anything that was. Don had a hip problem, so I had to do exercises with him, like a hip dysplasia thing, and so I had to do these exercises with him, like a couple times, 2-3 times a day, and so that's when I would. Lori would be on the bed with me. She was like 2, so then that's when she always laughs about. Couldn't just waste that time doing those exercises. So we sang, and she learned. Lori Catherine Brown lives at 609 Lerner Street in Clawson, Michigan. We just made that up, and so that she would know where she lived if she ever got lost. So that was when she was 2. She was very smart. Not particular. Oh, well, Don had the hip thing, and Don had we had a bout. Bill had a bout of getting boils, and it was a blood infection, and Don got one, and he had it. It was like Lori got one too. Lori had it one before Don, but hers was like on her hip or something, and we just had to keep it wet. But Don had his, and it was like on an upper lip, and we didn't have the money. In those days, you didn't go to the doctor. I mean, you had to pay money to go to the doctors. Even, I could go into the emergency room. We had health insurance for emergency, but you had to pay to go to the doctors. So he didn't really have the money to go to the doctors. So, and I thought I knew what was going on because we've had a boil before. So I was keeping compresses on it and everything, and poor little guy. Anyway, it was right on his lip. And finally, it wasn't looking real good. And I finally decided I had to go to the doctors. And I went to the doctors, and the doctor really yelled at me and said, don't you know that any infection above the upper, in the upper lip, that infection could go right to his brain, and he could be dead. And then I felt terrible. But he still has a little scar, and I think that is there to remind me that I was too cheap to go to the dentist to take him to the doctor. We would go for rides on Sunday afternoon. Everybody went to bed early, and they had dinner and went to bed, and you were in bed early, and that would be so we could have some time to ourselves. And, with 3 little ones, I'm trying to think anything. They played outside a lot, because someone had gotten rid of old, like, dollhouse. It was made out of logs. It weighed a ton. And it was like a little log cabin. And Lori would, used it as a dollhouse. Of course, Don would pee in it, and then they would all had a fit because he stunk up the dollhouse. Oh, he was very involved. Papa was very involved. I usually, because I never didn't nurse any of the babies. In those days, everybody bottle fed. It was supposed to have more protein and all this stuff. Nowadays they might not agree with that, but that's what they did then. And so he was always very supportive. He changed diapers. He, joined in whatever was going on. Somebody was sick, I'd pick the kid up and he'd grab the sheets and clean it, throw them in the laundry or whatever it was. He was very involved, and he very rarely loses his temper. Very rarely loses his temper. He's pretty even-tempered. But when you were saying I just thought about Lori had asthma when she was little. She still does, obviously, but we didn't know what it was in those days. And she would have these, like spells where she couldn't breathe very well. And the doctor, they'd give her Dimetap or different medicines. But that was pretty scary because I remember calling the doctor one time at it was at dinner time, and she wasn't eating, and she was about 3. And I said, we got to do something. This kid is not eating, and she, and so that's when he said, well, I think you need to go to an allergist, and so, which is what we did then. And she started getting allergy shots. But it was, it's scary when they can't breathe, and she was always really good about it too. But she didn't. She's kind of dramatic, but she wasn't too dramatic then. She was just not feeling good. That's why I always tell friends, and especially friends and grandchildren and things, or friends who have grandchildren, write down what you see or what they say, because it's you think I'm never going to forget this, but you do. I don't think so. It's different nowadays, but I think you just go by your gut. And every kid's different, like Lori was so well behaved. I thought I had parenting down. I really was good at this thing, because this little kid, she just walked around and she was cute and didn't touch it and say no, and she wouldn't touch it and everything. And then came Don. Well, the baloney. I do remember Lori standing there with one of her dolls, something or others. She's standing there, he's coming, here he comes, Mom, he's coming, because he'd be crawling, and he's like this little tank coming across, ready to demolish whatever she's got going. And they were very different. I generally think boys and girls are basically innately different. Now, it doesn't mean there aren't girls that are like boys. It doesn't mean that some boys are easier to raise. I have lots of friends that said that boys are easier to raise because you always know where you're at. Boys are much more open. They're not nearly as dramatic. And it's just kind of maybe what you're able to cope with. I could cope with the slamming of the doors better than I could the ball bouncing off my head.
Yeah.
No, not really. I think we only planned on having 2. And then suddenly Linda came along. Oh, definitely. I always thought the worst years are the years from 16 to 22, something like that, because you don't have any control over them anymore. Obviously, you've done as much as you can do. And at those ages, they think they really know everything. And you know how they don't. And you just hope that the mistakes, you know they're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. But you just hope that the mistakes they make aren't anything fatal and serious. You know, I mean, there's just so much things that can go wrong. And a lot of it's just luck, and a lot of it's bad timing, and a lot of it's bad choices. That's what I always tell everybody. You've heard it many times. Make good choices. You know, think about it. It's really a choice. It's not just what I feel like doing. Sometimes what you feel like doing isn't really the thing that you should do. You know, if you think about it. And it's hard to do something that you feel like really like to do this, but if you kind of can step back and say, think about it. You know what's the right way to go. And you never, and if you do that, you never regret anything in your life, because sure, there's things I did that I thought I wished I hadn't done it that way, but at the time I thought it was the right thing. And so you don't ever have any real regrets, because you did the best you could at the time. Oh, seeing your children grow up and become successful and have beautiful grandchildren, and that's just the best part of everything. I mean, grandchildren are much better than children, I'll tell you that. They are much better. And well, probably because you can enjoy them more, first of all. You're not, but you worry about them. I mean, like when I said about the decision of making the choice of a spouse, I mean, I think it's the number one choice you're going to make in your life. And it's not always something, and it's hard because emotions has to come into it. You have to really like this person or love this person, but you have to use your brain at the same time. You know, is this really a person? And I mean, I pray for every one of you guys since you were born for your spouses. I don't know who they're going to be, but I pray, dear God, please, may that person that's going to be their spouse, may they be being raised in a good family. May they learn to love the Lord. May they have good values, and may they be secure in themselves to make a good partner. I mean, I know you guys have all that. I mean, you were. I mean, you know, we all have our own personalities, but you were raised with love and people who love you, and you're from generations of people who love you and care for you and did their best to raise you. But you know, you can fall in love with somebody that's got a lot of baggage, and it makes starting out, it makes life that much harder. And I just pray that, you know, that there's somebody out there that's just the right one for you. And there's more than one. I mean, anybody that thinks, you know, because we all fall in love with somebody, and it's not really. And but there, you know, when you make a commitment, like that was the other thing, you know, we never really ever considered a divorce, ever. I mean, I ran away to the mall, but I was never really going to divorce them. You know, I was going to scare them maybe a little, but not really divorce them. But I mean, you know, and that was just it. That was a commitment. Now I understand, you know, there's circumstances. There are circumstances, and that happens, and that's all there's. You know, I understand that, but I think nowadays people give up so quickly. You know, and there's been. It's almost like, you know, these roads that go like this throughout life. And there's some years that we have, I'm thinking, oh gosh, you know, I mean, you know, we're not close like we used to be. We're not this, we're not that. You know, I wish this was going on. But I think a common faith is a really, and I know it sounds probably hokey, but when you have a common basis of a common religious foundation, that's a help. You know, I know we went on a marriage encounter one time, which is not for troubled marriages. But you know, we've been married about, I don't know, 15 years or so, and that was a really great experience. You know, but it's got to be. You have to have that commitment. You know, I'm doing this. I'm going to make it work. He's not perfect, but I cannot tell you how many times people I know of people that, you know, get a divorce, and the grass is always greener, but you still have to mow it. You know, so you're gonna trade the set of problems you got now for another set of problems. You know, and sometimes it can't be worked out. So I understand that, but A little bit of stick-to-itiveness would be good for this generation. Because I think divorces, and we've seen, like you guys have been blessed, not that, but we've seen what divorce does to kids. It's devastating. No matter how good they are, no matter what ages they are, it's just not good. And it's, kids they're smart, first of all, very smart. So it doesn't take them very long to figure out how to, when there's two of you together, you got a chance to beat them, to control them. But when you're separated, boy, lots of luck, because they, like I often said, my kids would probably have run away if or gone to the other parent if there was one. They didn't have a choice. We were together. They had to. There's no place else they could go. But I remember one time Lori, in fact, when we had gone down to South Seas Plantation, and she was mad at something. She was about 15, and she ran off, and she came back, and she said, I was going to run away, but she said, I knew Grandma would be so disappointed. She didn't care anything about us. You folks, I could care less. But I know my grandmother would be very disappointed. So whatever it is it takes, it holds them there. It worked. Oh, I hope I spoiled all of them at different times for different reasons. Different, like I said, you don't know parenting. Every kid responds to something different. Lori, I could just say, no, and she'd just shape up okay. But Don, I could get out the bullwhip, and it was not the same. She was kind of, being the youngest, she was kind of sly and slippery. She learned how to get around and to get along. That's different places in the family. And Don, being the personality that he is, he was hyper from the moment of conception. I can remember saying, oh God, if this kid is like this, maybe I should just keep him in my stomach. And I sometimes thought I wished I did, because he was very, very active, very hyper, waking me up at night and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that's his personality. And, I can't change that. All we ever felt we should do is to help him to live in his personality, and not adjust, but to appreciate his personality for what it is, and to use it where he can, and to hold it back where he couldn't. But he would always say, how come I always am the only one that gets in trouble? Well, you're the only one that I say, don't do this, and you do it, so that's the way it goes. Oh, devastated, oh my gosh. You got pictures of them there, I think I cried more than anybody else. Because they're going off to school, and I remember taking Lori crying. I remember crying when Lori went to high school, and I took her up to, it was Clearwater Central Catholic, and I thought, oh my God, there's grown men in that school. What is she doing in that school with all those great big males running around? It was very, they all look so old and so big, and yeah, it's mixed feelings, mixed feelings. Oh, I was excited and thrilled. Yeah, Don obviously was the first one, and he called me and told me, I think I was up here at the lake. Courtney was born in September. No, I must have been back in Florida. I don't remember exactly, but I know he called me and told us, and excited, very excited. And then you came right along right after it. Then every year, boom, boom, boom. Lots of excitement. Oh, I wish I had some that would be wise and I could say something. Pray for your children. I pray for my children and my grandchildren every single day. Please, Lord, please take care of them, keep them safe, help them make good choices, good decisions. Sometimes he listens, sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. But that's all you can do, because you really can't do anything. So you just have to put it in God's hands and trust that you've done what you can do. Mm-hmm. That's it. Otherwise, you just worry yourself to death. And that happens. You do have periods of worrying yourself to death. My mother was Beatrice Catherine Shaver. Her mother was Jessie Catherine Kavanaugh Wachter. And My mother was a twin. She had a twin sister and one brother. My father was one of 7. His father died when he was very young. Under probably about 10 or 12. Yeah, I think so. His family came from France, but right from Switzerland, and they were because I do some genealogy stuff, and everything I find and everything I said talks about both of those families. They were good, hardworking, honest. They were farmers. The Shaver family farmed strawberries in the Detroit area. They were big strawberry farmers. The Wachter family had my grandfather and Kavanaughs. Were from Cleveland and came here, and they were more I don't know what kind of farmers, animal farmers, but they both sold their farms, and quite young in life for somebody in those ages. Probably I would guess in their 40s or 50s. Of the great grandfather's age, and so they then had money, which you bought houses with, and so that's why when I said my parents lived in a house that my grandparents had bought, they owned real estate. My dad's parents had a number of houses in Detroit, and when that grandfather died, the youngest child was only 2 or 3, but my grandmother on my father's side never had to go to work. They had a number of properties, and as the Depression came and everything, she would sell one, and then the family would live off of that one, and then she'd sell another one, until when the Depression and everything was finally over with, she had 2 houses left. So that's, how they managed. They were, managed their money well. I don't think anybody was ever what you'd call lived high on the hog, like my great-grandparents built this cottage, and but nothing was ever really fancy. I'm very blessed. Nobody's ever, no. One time when I was renting the duplex that your mom lived in, somebody came to look at it, and it was 2 men, and one guy said, "Oh, I want to see the backyard." And so there was a carport in the back, so I took them out to the back to see the carport. When I came back in, they left, and then I found out that $100 was missing from my purse. So that was my big crime story. Papa, he just saves my life every day. Because I don't know how to do, I'm not very technological, and Aunt Linda, she saves my life too, because she's my tech support. And I help, so yeah, they're my 2 lifesavers. Oh yes, I've been in the hospital a lot.
Yeah.
Or a fair amount. I thought I was very healthy. I had the 3 children. Back in 1987, I had ovarian cancer. And so I was hospitalized a number of times, surgeries, and for all my chemo and radiation. Chemo, not for radiation, but for my chemos, I would go in the hospital for a week at a time. And that was in Orlando, but then radiation, I had to move out to Texas. And I'd fly out there on Monday morning and get radiation for a week, and then I'd fly back home to Orlando on Friday. And that was a hospitalization, and that was probably the main thing, because, the other thing was I had an accident in Europe, and I fell in Portugal, and I fractured my acetabulum, which is the socket the hip goes in. And I was very happy to be hospitalized, not particularly happy to be hospitalized in Portugal, because they were very, very nice, but they didn't have a lot of advanced techniques, you might say.
Yeah.
And so I was very happy to, our American Express flied me home, and I was happy to get into the hospital here where they repaired my hip, and then they said, okay, you're going to need a hip replacement in probably about 5 years. Well, that was in 2008, 2016. I made it 8 years, and I had hip replacement. So those were my hospitalizations. Well, I was pretty young. It was a shock, because I couldn't believe that I was 44, a non-smoking, pretty much non-drinking, broccoli eating jogger. And I couldn't believe that I would have cancer. And there was no ovarian cancer in any of the family. So it was just really a shock. But I was young and healthy and strong. And I was able to get a really high doses of chemo because my heart was strong enough because your heart has to be really strong to be able to pump it through the veins fast. So if it's poison, and if it stays in the veins, it causes even more damage. So I was very lucky. I was in good shape, and I'm here. To have a stage 3 ovarian cancer in 1987 was, and be here today is remarkable. And I'm very, thank you God, conservative.
Conservative?
Yes, very conservative. Republican, I guess that would be. I think I started out as Democrat because John Kennedy was Catholic. He was a Democrat. So that's how I kind of started out with. I think he was the first one I voted for. But then as I started to understand the differences, I am definitely more conservative. And I remember being Kennedy was back in the 60s, and you know, I graduated from high school in 60. I don't think we could vote then, though, not until we were 21. So, but I think that just the fact that he was a Catholic, because that was so unheard of. You know, you think the publicity and stuff is bad now. I mean, and it wasn't that bad, but you know, everybody said, oh, you know, the Pope's going to take over the White House, and no, it's going to be. So, probably that one. The friend, I guess that I would say I could say Papa because I've known him since he was. I didn't really know him like you know since first grade, but I did know him since 7th grade. But I have we have a number of people that we went all through grade school with and high school. So that's, you know, that's the longest.
Did you have any best friends?
Oh yeah, my little Scott Gym club, you know, I told you we were very close. But my friend Carol Whitney, that I know you've met, she was a good friend from 7th grade on, and so that was, you know, they would probably have to say that was my best friends. I didn't have any neighbors or anything that was my age that I grew up with, so that would have been even earlier maybe. But
yeah.
Choices. Well, you know, I think you make little choices every day, and there's little easy ones, but and I think that's one of the things that is a little bit. We grew up knowing or really thinking self-discipline was a very, admirable, something that you wanted to try to do, control yourself. You try to think, you know, well, I suppose, you know, you look back on it and you think, well, should we buy a house? Should we get a new car? Should we take a trip? Should we, those kind of things. But those aren't really, I guess from my point of view now, they weren't very big major decisions. You know, it wasn't big choices. I think probably the biggest one would be when we decided to move to Florida. I mean, because here we lived in Michigan. I thought I'd live and die in the same house. I didn't have any dreams that I would ever travel or live the life that I have lived. But then when Papa, you know, we said, well, you know, we've been married 10 years. We've never done nothing. Very exciting. Let's do it for a year was what it was going to be. That was, and so, but we didn't have, nobody moved us. We had a U-Haul, packed everything up we owned in this U-Haul, and 3 kids, and headed to Florida. And then after we were there again for a year, I think I've mentioned that myself and the kids were homesick.
Yeah.
And so then we talked Bill into moving back, and that probably wasn't the best decision. Because we turned around again with the U-Haul, turned around again, and loaded it all up and headed back to Florida. So that was probably the biggest decision, and it worked out good in the long run. It would have to be Papa.
Papa.
Yeah. I mean, you know, when we've grown up together, and so, you know, I've learned from him, and I hope he's learned from me. So that's been the biggest impact. But then each of your children, you get to see life through their eyes, and their eyes are very different from yours, and so that's another learning experience, and it changes a lot of things the way in different ways than you thought that you would choose? I would be more spontaneous.
More spontaneous?
Yeah. I'm just very, like I said, I'm responsible and I do what I think is right, but I'm not very spontaneous. Just to, just let the chips fall where they may, or do something very unexpected. Scary. Stressful is the weather up here. I wanted it so much for it to be beautiful and sunny and warm when you guys were here, and that's just not what's happening. And I stress over it. And Papa kids me all the time because I stress over it, like I can do anything about it. I mean, I know that. But I check the weather whenever anybody's coming. I want to make sure everybody has a good time, and I know you'd had an even better time if the weather would have been great. But I can't do anything about it, so I have to let it go. No. Oh, I did take guitar lessons.
Yeah?
Yeah, that was when I was about, probably, I still lived in Michigan, so I was like in my late 20s, because I got married when I was 20 and then, or 19, or 20. But, and it was probably about 10 years. I was probably right around my 30th year. I think I was getting a little, I had long hair, and I took guitar lessons, but I realized that I could, you can play the chords, but if you don't have a good voice, it doesn't do you any darn good, because you can't very well, you can't sing just the chords. So after I thought about that and did that for a little while, it didn't go very well. So I gave my guitar to an elderly man at a nursing home that I visited. Passed it on. Oh, probably ordinary. I don't think I have a probably great sense of humor. I don't think I make people laugh too much. But I just think I wouldn't say I would. I mean, I have told jokes. I have told a couple jokes, but I'm not a particular. I can have some funny things that I can do, Yeah. I mean, I can do some funny dances and things like that, but nothing that's particularly for a sense of humor. I really enjoy knitting. I enjoy a lot of handwork. As I learned from my Aunt Loretta that I said I lived with as a little child, and I learned to embroider and knit and crochet. And then an elderly lady here at the cottage taught me how to quilt. And to me, it's very relaxing. And I tried to teach your mom and Aunt Linda, and nobody had any interest in it at all. And then last year, Linda said, I'd like to learn how to knit. And she took to it like a duck in water. She just picked it up and loves it and is knitting blankets for her dogs and things. But to me, I don't feel, I guess because I'm so organized or like I do what I'm supposed to do. I can't sit and just watch TV because that just seems like it's just too much of a waste of time. So if I'm knitting or something, then I feel like I'm accomplishing something at the same time. So I can knit or quilt or something, and I can sit and listen to TV, like at night. And even at night, I can't just sit there and watch TV. But I have something in my hands, then I feel like I'm doing something. Probably that we belong to Legatus, which we started in Orlando, which is a group of Catholic CEOs, and we're still very involved in that. We started the first chapter it's been over 25 years now, and they're some of our very dearest friends. And then we're real involved with Bishop Moore High School, where most of the kids went. We would have been involved in Incarnation, but it was too far away. So. So that's probably the height of it. Yes, we do have a scholarship that because as you get to a certain age, like there really isn't I'm very blessed, as you can tell. There's not much that I want or need in life. And so we started a number of years ago at Christmas time asking the kids and the grandkids just to give us a donation, any amount from $1 to whatever. And then we match it. And we have a scholarship at Bishop Moore. But this year, I don't know if your mom even told you, but this fall, November, we are being honored at Bishop Moore. They have a big gala, and we're a little apprehensive because I'm not really this kind of a person that likes to be the one, both of us. But they're going to honor us at this big hoop-de-doo party. And it is an honor, I understand, but it's really a fundraiser for the school. But since we believe in the Catholic education, then I let them make a hoopla, and hopefully they'll get some money. I loved Italy, and if you ever go there, our favorite thing that we have done, and a lot of people don't know about it, is that there's a tour called the Scavi, S-C-A-V-I, and it's the tour to underneath St. Peter's, where they have found the bones of St. Peter in an old grave cemetery, and it was very cool, very cool. And then actually our favorite trip was when we went to Antarctica. Scenery was amazing. So those were two, and obviously Rome is kind of, everybody would like that, but Antarctica, I was really surprised. I don't like it when it's below 80 degrees. So you can imagine that going to Antarctica was not something I expected to really enjoy. But but it was everything and more. We never had any pets. Well, when my children were little, we had pets, but they, as papas used to say, they all had to be able to have a burial at sea, which meant we would all stand around the commode and say a prayer and flush it and sing a little song. So they all were goldfish or things like small things. But we did have a hamster. We had hamsters a number of times. Your mother actually inadvertently killed one of them, but other than that, we have had little popsicle stick grave markers in the backyard. But no, and neither did Papa, so neither of us grew up having dogs or cats. I think my sister had a bird, but I don't think no pets. Not really. I love to travel, and I've traveled a lot of places, and probably are places that we haven't, and there's definitely places I haven't been to, but not really. I guess I would have liked to maybe have been somebody that liked cold weather better, and we went skiing a number of times, and I didn't start that until I was over 50, and I was happiest the day we were leaving because I knew I did it and I accomplished it, and but other than that, I'm just not very adventuresome, I guess. Oh, I have so many memories, but also as you get older, your memories kind of dim a little. But no, I have lots of memories. I have wonderful friends. I have wonderful grandchildren like you guys. I can't even imagine that my life would have been as blessed as it's been. Sure, there's always trouble. Everybody has problems, but 3 great kids, 8 great grandkids. What more really could you want, really? I can't think of it. And the best times are times when, like this weekend, when all 3 of the kids, like Lori, Don, and Linda, were together. And the family vacations, when we've done that, those were great memories. Some of them were a little testy, but we survived them all. They all were, when you look back on them, they were all great fun. And so those were probably the best memories. Family, that's what it's about. That's always the best memories. Lori, Don, Linda, Courtney, Evan, William, Dane, Mason, Jake, Shay, and Grant. It's just each one is so individual and so, you don't realize it when you have like your first child. You think, oh man, I love this kid so much. I can't imagine. What am I going to do if I ever have another one? I never could love this number 2 and then suddenly 2 comes along and you think, well, I really love these 2, but don't give me another one, Lord, because I don't think I can love another one. And that's the way it is through life. I can remember when Courtney was born, it was like the first one. Oh, grandchildren, they're just the greatest. Oh, and then Evan, oh, well, he's the first boy. Oh, that's great. And then the next one, we're going to have another boy. Courtney, Evan, Will, yeah, going to have another boy. But, that's the miracle of love. You love, and your love just, the more you give it, or the more you feel it, the more it multiplies. if I think maybe if you don't have anybody to love, then you don't feel that way. But every one of them is a joy and a delight. I mean, in different ways, and they're not all. That's a hard thing because the children and you're looking at people and your grandchildren, especially your own children, you see their potential because they have so much potential. These little beings, and you think, oh, they could do this or they could do that, and then sometimes they make decisions that you think, oh, that's not a very good choice. You're going to do that, but you have to realize that it's their life and they get to make those choices. And sometimes they from my point of view, they would have had a much better life if they did it this way. But that's their life, and and that's a hard lesson to, not a hard lesson, but it's kind of it's something that you have to learn to live with, because you can't live their lives, and obviously you have to let them grow up and experience. But you don't want to see them get hurt, and if you're going to be you pick to be a I don't know what it would be, a worm harvester. You think, oh gosh, I just saw that on Dirtiest Jobs. Think, oh, you're not going to have a very great life being a worm harvester. But if you were a doctor, you could have a lot of nice things. But that's not what. If you want to be a worm harvester, then go ahead and do it. It's like, okay, make good choices.
Make good choices.
Yeah, make good choices would be the one, and trust in God, because like even with all my cancers and things, I keep thinking, if I believe in God, as I say I do, and as you get older, you get closer to the end, you start examining these things, and you think, do I really believe this stuff I've been talking about all these years? But if you really believe in it, and you really believe that there is a God that loves you and cares about you and cares about the world, then He's not going to pick something for you to do that is dumb. Now, I have a lot of questions. I mean, when I get there, there's a lot of things that I wouldn't have done this way, but I can't see the whole scheme of the world. So who am I to say, no, don't give me this cross to bear? I'd be better with this cross. I'm going to tell Him that I'm better at carrying some other cross? I don't think so. So, you might as well just trust that there's a reason. And, like I said, I've been very blessed. I have never had any of my children or my grandchildren. I have never lost any of them, and that would be just a really, really difficult thing to live with, to have to live through. But, if God asks something like that, there's a reason. And all I can do is just trust that, He knows what's best, and who am I to tell Him? So that's it. That's pretty much my philosophy for life. At this point in it, of course, I'm getting closer and closer, and we'll see how right I was. One of my favorite books is The Rhythm of Life by Matthew Kelly. It's a Catholic book, Christian book type of thing, and I really like that book. It's a great rhythm of life. It's funny because some families play a lot of board games. We never really played a lot of. I played them with the kids when they were little. Probably Monopoly. Like here in the summertime, we would play Monopoly, and we used to play with Courtney a lot, and she'd get mad when she didn't win. Anything chocolate.
Yeah.
Chocolate. Yeah, I have a very large sweet tooth. Blue.
Blue? Do you have a reason why blue is your favorite color?
Because I have blue eyes. Favorite drink? Iced tea. No, Arnold Palmer. Iced tea with lemonade.
Yeah.
Because of my cancer, I don't deal with carbonation very well. And so, I used to drink just plain tea, which I wasn't all that wild about. But when Arnold Palmer came along, that's a great drink. It's lemonade and tea, and it's a good combination. Cherry chocolate. Something with cherry and chocolate. My favorite flower. A daisy.
Daisy?
It's happy. Bananas. I like bananas a lot, but I like cherries. Cherries. Yeah. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, 4th of July. Well, I don't have much of an appetite, especially the last number of years. Favorite meal today? It's not breakfast. I am not a breakfast person. And I would have to say probably dinner. What would it be now? We go to the movies a lot, usually, especially when we're home. But I like something that has a happy ending. Something that has a happy ending, and I don't like anything scary. I am not a scary person, or the kind that where it's suspenseful and you know that something's going to happen. Oh, I close my ears like that and I hum. So I can't hear the music in the background, because you get the music in the background, you know something's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, I don't like, I got to be happy. I can deal with Papa's movies, which are cars flying through the skies and people blowing heads off, because I can close my eyes real quickly. But the suspense is really hard for me. Italian food.
Italian food?
Which is a little difficult now because I can't eat gluten, so I have to kind of, it's not too easy. Summer, yeah, because I'm always cold. I'm very cold-blooded, and summer is hopefully a little bit warmer. I like country western.
Yeah.
I like country western because they've got good songs and you can sing along. And when I jogged a lot, I used to do country western because it was a good speed. It wasn't too fast like rock. It was easier to do country western. Ideal day: sleep in. First of all, wake up with Papa. Sleep in. Go for breakfast or a nice walk. I like to walk, which I can't do a lot of now. But accomplish something. I always feel like I like to have some fun, accomplish something, do something that, like if I had a cupboard that was bugging me, clean it out. Have time to say my rosary, which I say every day. Sometimes it's very fast, and I probably shouldn't say it that fast, but time to be quiet and alone, and dinner with friends.
That's wonderful.
That would be it. And I want to thank you, Mr. Evan, for honoring me with this. And I do want to say to any of my grandchildren or great-grandchildren or great-grandchildren that I love you all. And I may not be around when you see this, but please know that I am praying for you, and I love you, and I believe in you, and I'm looking forward to all of us being in heaven together so I can get to know you if I didn't get to know you here on earth. And I'll be there waiting for you, I hope. That's it.
Well, thank you for talking with us, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you.